Hey everybody, thanks so much for joining me. My name is Shemane and I'm so excited because I have the honor of introducing my guest, Major General Paul Vallely. Paul, did I say it right this time?
Vallely.
Vallely. Okay.
That's
So
a difficult one, isn't it?
no, well, look at my name. Do you know where my name came from, by the way?
She and mane of a horse.
No.
No?
My name actually comes from the movie El Cid with Sophia Loren. That was
Oh,
her name.
no kidding?
Yep, Sophia Loren and
Well,
Charlton Heston. In fact,
I like it.
yeah, I do too. My parents spelled it differently because in the movie, which was in the 50s, and I was born in 62,
Uh-huh.
they spelled her name. Her name was spelled CHE, and my parents thought that people
I
would have
like it.
that hard CH sound like church.
Yep.
So they changed it to SHE. So, yeah, in fact, that's one of the things that I want to get into about the coincidences that are in my life. But first, I wanted to just welcome you and allow you the opportunity to say hello to everybody who's watching. And I also want to talk, number one, most important thing right now is the coronavirus. You have sent me some information, and I do appreciate that. But tell me about what the evidence is saying lately about where the coronavirus started and how.
Well, I'll tell you what, if you don't mind, I have a few notes here.
Go for
And
it.
I made this up because we're developing a plan for the president on retribution to the Chinese Communist Party, where we've tracked the virus that was in the Wuhan lab, by the way, manufactured there, and then spread and pushed out and a cover up by the Chinese Communist Party. But let me, if I may, I know it's a little bright on my eyes, but
That's
let
okay.
me let me read this to you because I think it'll lay out where we're going with this. The world is now in the midst of a pandemic that threatens millions. As a priority in this emergency is the suppressing the coronavirus to keep Americans safe and healthy. But our next priority must be holding the Chinese Communist Party accountable for unleashing this plague on the world. Instead of reporting the deadly outbreak in Wuhan when it first appeared, the Chinese Communist Party engaged in a cover up, intimidating brave whistleblowers, by the way, by one of the doctors, Dr. Li Wenliang, for destroying samples that pointed to the virus's origin, which is at the lab, and shutting down a laboratory that shared the virus genetic sequence, also shared on the internet. By the time the Chinese Communist Party switched from cover up to containment, it had already been too late in January for the Chinese people and the world, because it then was dissipated and it was spread then, as we know, from January the 10th to February the 28th on the Chinese New Year festival. So, but just because of the tardy efforts, the pandemic was inevitable. According to researchers at the University of Southampton, worldwide cases could have been reduced by 2/3 if the Communist Party had responded to the virus just 1 week sooner. It had responded 3 weeks sooner. A stunning 95% of the cases could have been avoided and contained. So that's the basis of laying out on our investigation into the virus, where it came from, and the amount of studies that were done within the Wuhan laboratory. But we've got to hold the Chinese Communist Party accountable. And so we're coming up with a plan for the president that will list a number of things that we can do in retribution for what damage they've done to themselves and also the world.
And
So,
we know that it didn't start in the wet market,
right,
but
correct.
it was actually started by their scientists who were manipulating and experimenting with bats
Right.
and placing this disease in mammals to see what the effects would be, right?
Yeah, and they were testing what they call cross species contamination. And at the same time, as we found out, they were developing a vaccine to counter that virus. And so they had that as well. And that's why you see low amounts in Shanghai and Beijing, as we talked about before, but very large amounts as far as density in Wuhan itself of 11 million people.
So when I don't know if you know this about me, but our house that was once featured on MTV Cribs was contaminated with toxic mold between the walls. We never saw anything, but we just kept getting sicker and sicker. I had to become my own investigative sleuth and find out what was going on and how to cure myself and my family. And in my research on mold toxicity, I also started reading a lot and started researching about Lyme disease and how Lyme disease was actually created in Lyme, Connecticut, well, on Plum Island at Lab 257, which there's a book called Lab 257. And in the book, it talks about how there was an experiment where scientists actually walked around San Francisco with a briefcase full of a virus and wanted to see how that virus would spread and where. Now, to my knowledge, the author of Lab 257 hasn't been arrested. Although he lists names and dates and places about what took place. My question for you is, how closely related is this, the coronavirus, and did they know? Like we say, well, they waited too long. I'm tending to think that they knew exactly what they were doing.
Well, again, they may well have. We don't know for sure whether it was an accident, but once it was out, we know that the Communist Party over there did nothing about it for several weeks and let it spread. I think at that time it became a bio warfare weapon. Once they let that spread as they did, that then became a weapon against the United States and against other countries in the world. And that's why they have to be held accountable. So from that standpoint, as more investigation goes on, we'll find more that will validate what I'm telling you today about that laboratory. And of course, they were working on a number of other things, I guess projects, if you want to call it, within that laboratory, and they've been doing it for years. And we even know certain Americans have funded part of that Wuhan laboratory. But I won't mention any names right now, but there's some interesting networking that was going on in China. And anyhow, this thing, I mean, this whole COVID-19, a mystery, but yet not a mystery once we have found out really what has happened.
Can you talk in any sense about the vaccine and who created it?
Well, of course, we're looking at all sorts of vaccines right now, and the what is it called? The I'm trying to think of what they're using now, chloroquine, and is working very, very well, by the way. But the only thing I know from our investigation is that the Wuhan laboratory, as they created this virus, cross-species virus, COVID-19, at the same time, they knew and they were smart enough that we have to have a vaccine just in case it gets out, or how can we control it? And I think right in there is that gray area of whether it was an accident or was intentional. But we know people from the lab lived in Wuhan. They were getting out, mixing with people. And if they were affected by that in the laboratory, then it spread from there. But we don't know for sure, again, whether it was an accident or whether it was intentional. But the most important thing to take away from this is the culpability of the Chinese Communist Party now to attack the United States, bring it to its knees, making it very vulnerable to anything else they might want to do with North Korea or any other adversaries of the United States. But we're going to be strong enough, and we are strong enough, we're going to overcome that. But by overcoming it, as I said, I think to you earlier, we've got to put America back to work. And we can do that county by county, town by town, in low risk or no risk areas. And then the high density areas like New York, New Jersey, and so on, that's a whole different story. But most of America, the majority of I think 3,114 counties we have in America. The vast majority, they can put people back to work. For example, the three lowest states are Montana, Idaho, and Wyoming right now. They did have a big density infectious in the population in Ketchum, Idaho, when a ski group came in of 400 and some people came in from all over the United States, and they brought with them the coronavirus and infected all of the Sun Valleys to a great degree. That's where my daughter lives, and so we've been in touch with her, and they're in total lockdown still. But the vast majority of Idaho, again, they can be put back to work. And other states, I think, like we talked about last week, West Virginia only had one death. So you can take all the counties and do it county by county and town by town and say, you can go back to work tomorrow. You can go back to work on Monday. This can all be analyzed and programmed. And that's what the president, I think, is intending to do. But you have so many people that are fighting them now, fighting that old idea. Even this Dr. Fauci, this guy is becoming more and more questionable as the days go on.
Well, let's talk about that. Do you think Fauci is the fall guy?
No, he's not. He's a doctor. He's been associated with the Clintons, and that whole thing goes back to the Obama administration. And he's obviously a great doctor, but he doesn't necessarily, as a doctor, be a leader by any means, as our president is. So the president's fighting, trying to lead the country back from this nemesis and through this virus that has spread throughout the country. And then you have Dr. Fauci. I mean, he's not a leader. He's not there to inspire the people. But like they've said, a lot of the doctors are risk averse.
Yeah.
They don't even want to take chances on the hydrochloroquine, for example, holding back on that. We have to do studies. We have to do this. When they found an Italian doctor, a French doctor, that had 40 cases and they were all cured of COVID-19. So all over the world, they've been using hydrochloroquine and it's been working. But you have these doctors who are risk averse, afraid of getting sued or something's going to happen. But great leaders aren't risk averse, okay?
Well, I totally understand that. And I think I've always said that doctors are just practicing medicine. And in my case, when I got sick, I was diagnosed with having pre-emphysema, and I don't smoke. I've been teaching group fitness classes since 1980. So I scrambled to try and find alternative remedies to heal myself and my family, like infrared sauna, vitamin IV, and oxygen. How do you think that this can change the way we practice medicine, or actually not practice medicine, and rely on us as human beings, our own intellect, thinking, let's not cover the problem. I mean, in certain situations, you break your arm, you got to go to the doctor and get it set. But so many of us as Americans and around the world, we've become so reliant on pharmaceuticals. And I think this is really changing our way of thinking.
Yes.
To rely on ourselves.
Well, that's true. And I've done so many shows so far, but I call it the resetting of the world, the resetting of the financial markets, the medicines, the research and development, the banking financial system, the military preparedness. All of things are going to blend into what I call the reset. And this is what the coronavirus has created, a tire reset. Some of it's going to be very good, by the way. Probably most of the resets is going to be very good.
I agree. I mean, we're sending our kids to colleges and universities that are basically brainwashing them and wasting a lot of money. And now everything is available online. So why do that? I think, and we can work from home. Our way of life has not changed at all. We've always lived off the land. We've been fortunate enough to have property and to be able to do that. But I think a lot of people are going to second guess everything they do. And as far, as women, getting our hair done and nails done every week, I mean, that's not going to happen anymore. We really don't need, like you said, this is a great reset for us to really realize and start comprehending what is most important to us. That's our faith, our family, and our country. But I want to ask you, speaking of faith, why do you think that some of the Democratic governors are buckling down so hard? There was a pastor who was doing an outdoor service, and people were in their cars in the parking lot. They were social distancing, their windows were rolled up. Why did 50 police cars suddenly surround them and make them disperse? I don't understand that.
Well, it goes back to what I was saying about some of the doctors. The governors are risk averse. They're afraid things are going to go south on them and it's not going to work out and they're not going to be elected. They're not looking through the reality prism, Shemane. They're not looking through the reality prism. In the reality prism of the governors, they should be looking at every town and every county that's not infected, low or no risk at all, and say, go back to work. But over here in New Jersey, Manhattan, Queens, Long Island, we can't do that. We have to see this thing out and make sure that we don't have any increasing patients, and we're on the decrease, as they say, bending that curve down to almost zero, which would be the ultimate goal here. So politicians can't solve anything, it seems. Look at our Congress, totally dysfunctional. And now we have a very bright businessman who looks at the country as it should operate and function for the people, not to be reelected, not to be everything politicized. And so we're dealing, Shemane, with the governors the same way, that same mindset. And you can see it on television, those that are playing politics. And those are the people that need to be voted out of office in the next election.
Well,
we're going to do that in Montana.
Do you think there's an ulterior motivation, though, for people to, certain politicians, to encourage citizens to become more reliant on the government and not go to work, just stay home?
Well, sure. That's the big state, you know. That's the socialist. As I said, socialism is communist light, like Bud Light, and that's what they want. They want the big state. It's a top-down vision that they have, not a bottom-up.
Yeah.
And bottom up by our Constitution is for the people and by the people. Bottom up, we elect them to do certain things, but we run the country, the people. But many of these individuals that have gotten in Congress, got elected, they don't see it that way once they get in power. Look at how many millionaires come out of Congress.
Yeah, how is that?
When their terms are up.
If you look at it, there are employees. Politics are employees.
Yes, absolutely. That's a great way to look at it.
So many people have been afraid. That's one of the things that I've learned about my husband is if you don't like something and you're not voting, you're not sending letters to your congressmen and your senators, if you're not being an activist, then you really have no stake in the game. So this is causing us a great reset, like you said, for us to be encouraged to become empowered and start speaking our mind and saying, no, this isn't right. My dad is 82 years old, lives in Michigan, and he has had lawn care service for 10 years. He sold his lawnmower, but the governor of Michigan suddenly banned lawn care services. I don't understand why. That doesn't make any sense at all. But you can't buy furniture, and get this one, Paul. You can't buy seeds. Now, explain that one.
She's an idiot. We all know that. I do a radio show out of Michigan every 2 weeks with Dr. Dave Janda, who's a great guy, and I've given speeches out in Michigan. And I've been involved in Michigan as a child when my father and his brothers had a business in downtown Detroit. But this woman's crazy up there. I mean, it's just absolutely, they're idiots. I don't know how else to explain it. Educated, supposedly gone through university, colleges, did this.
That's the point, though. That's the point. Brainwashed. Gone through colleges and university, and she got into that system. It's
never
really
had a job per se. These politicians, Joe Biden's never had a job in his life outside of politics. I mean, give me a break. They don't know how to run it. They couldn't run a Burger King.
Yeah.
or a McDonald's. They don't have the skills to do that. That's how lame these politicians are, particularly in the Democratic Party. But we got a lot of rhinos too, Republican in name only,
Yeah.
that we're dealing with. But I've never seen such a dysfunctional organization of people in my entire life. And I'm just a few years younger than your father. I could be your father, I guess. But I
Well,
graduated
I don't
college.
know. I don't know.
I graduated college in 61 and you were born in
Okay.
62. Okay.
All right. Yeah, you could actually be my dad. Okay.
Well, could be. But anyhow, we're just dealing with so many incompetent people in government. The deep state is just still filled with them. That's why Mark Meadows has come in to be chief of staff. He's going to finally clean that White House out and a number of the executive branch organizations. That's his prime mission, by the way. Let's clean this mess up.
Well,
Let's clean this deep state up.
that's what we elected President Trump to do, is drain the swamp. And
Yeah.
I believe and hope and pray that that's what's going on right now.
Yeah.
Tell me about the immunity cards and how is that a possibility that we're going to one day have to show our papers, please?
Oh goodness, that's just another that came from, was that Dr. Fauci that came up with that? I mean, this is not creative. They're even trying to do away with the ID cards now, so you don't have to use them for voting or anything else, but yet you need them to get on an airplane. I mean, these people, I don't know where they're coming from. Actually, I can't figure them out. Again, brilliant people that have gone and become doctors and professors and all that, but no sense of common sense, if I may say that. No common sense.
No common.
And that's what we need.
What do you think about the fact that Google is working on an app to monitor us and to keep us alerted if we have come into contact with anybody who has the coronavirus?
Waste of time.
I mean, is it going to happen? Is there a potential?
Well, I mean, we got monitors. We've had them for decades on different things, heart monitors and monitoring your blood pressure. And what are those new watches that are out now that can?
Apple Watch?
Yeah, the one you wear on your wrist. And if you're working out doing aerobics or something, it registers your pulse rate and all that stuff and how many steps you take during the day. So that we monitors all over the place. But we don't need Big Daddy looking down on us and Google creating that when they should be working on other things.
Well, China has already implemented something similar. So how do we know that that's not where our next steps are?
Well, there again, you know, they can develop everything they want to. It's a matter of, again, of First Amendment rights and protection of our privacy. All of that's got to be looked into, that we're very independent people, Americans are. And we like to control our own lives as best we can. We don't like any corporation or big government controlling our lives because we hire them to do certain things. And that's all laid out in the Constitution. So we just have to watch very carefully. Again, they work for us. Yeah. And if Google's going to buy something like that, we don't like it, we're not going to buy it. Say, no, we don't need that.
Here's the problem though. How many times do you get an app on your cell phone? Who reads all of that terminology? And all you do is click to agree.
Yeah,
you know, check to agree. So that's what I'm thinking, you know, that's what the word on the street is, that we're just going to click to agree. We don't know what we're agreeing to. It's like Nancy Pelosi said, you got to pass the bill before you learn what's going to be in the bill.
That's their thought. Yeah. Well, I'm not going to click on anything like that. I'll tell you that.
Good. And that's, you know what, that's why I'm so grateful that you agreed to talk to me. And when I had showed Ted some information about you, because I've been trying to educate him about what's going on, and it's not that he didn't believe it, he needed to hear from some trusted resources. And I showed him something, a paper that you had written. He goes, oh, I know Paul. Here's his number, text him. So I was so glad. And that's, you know what, that's why I'm speaking out. I don't have to do this. I'm not gaining anything from this. In fact, I'm probably losing a few followers, but at this point, I don't care, because the bigger picture is that we are waking up people to what's going on.
Finally, after decades of dumbing down our people and our young people, absolutely. So again, we're resetting. Hopefully, we're going to reset spiritually in this country again.
Yeah.
Yes. And get away from this anti-religious environment, atmosphere we see happening throughout the country. And we're going to have a reset in Hollywood. I think streaming is going to take over Hollywood completely. Yeah. I mean, you look at Netflix, that stock is up again. People are, during this lockdown, are watching more and more movies. But I can't remember the exact number, but I think Netflix paid, I don't know how many millions of dollars, 380 million, something like that, on content. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's why streaming and people not going to the movie theaters anymore. So all of Hollywood's going to be reset.
Yep. Well, is there anything else that you'd like to share with our audience, or is there anything that you can tell us about the new project you're working on?
Well, again, the new project has come up with a battle plan, if you want to call it that, of retribution against the Chinese Communist Party. We have to hold them accountable for what they've done. The other projects we're working on is a very highly classified project called Mulberry that prevents hacking into the internet, provides hacking into any organization, government organization. And if you don't have the software and hardware for this, then you'll be open for continued hacking. But our technology that we're developing is to prevent any hacking into any internet, and basically put it in sort of a capsule like that nobody can get it but those that you want to be in that. So it's very interesting technology that hopefully will come about shortly.
It's very important too. I have been shadow banned on Instagram, so I know I posted one video talking about this, and we know that all the other social media sites are suppressing conservative and Christian viewpoints. So I look forward to you developing that program, and I'll be the first to try it out.
Sure, absolutely. Well, I'll keep you informed as we go along here, but we have other threats. You know, our internal threats are what I'm concerned about, is this movement to socialism, the movement and destruction of the Democratic Party versus what it used to be. People not standing up, people trying to promote big government, you know, and they're trying to spend all of our money. And I'm worried about the national debt. I think that's a great threat to the country. We've got to get a handle on that somehow.
We've got to start running the country, and I believe President Trump is. We've got to run the country like we would run our own household. If there's not enough money in the bank to pay for something, you just don't get it.
Right, exactly.
We've relied on credit for so long. Not we, I mean, Ted and I, when we buy a car, we buy a car. We don't have credit. You know, we don't take out loans for things like that. So it's really important that, like you said, this is a great reset.
Yeah, it's a great reset, and I look forward to getting past this pandemic, and I look forward to the reset and resetting for the values, going back to the Constitution, sticking by the rights, the Bill of Rights, the rights that the people should have, again, for the people and by the people. And I hope that reset really works, and that we look to a very bright future, especially for our young. For my 7-year-old grandson, I really want him to live in a world that he can enjoy and have the freedom to enjoy the things he'd like to do, whether it's in athletics or education or music or whatever. So that's what we have to look forward to.
Do you think it's possible, and what is the timeline that we can actually achieve that?
Oh, it's going to take a decade to get a lot of it done, but we have to have the right leadership. You know, in the White House, we have to have the right leadership and our governors. I don't know how we change Congress other than doing a constitutional convention and getting term limits, which are absolutely necessary, and get Congress under control. I'd say the people getting Congress under control so they can do the work for the people, pass the right legislation, keep us out of debt. And, you know, they're taking in money every day into the treasury from our taxes and spending it going out the door, and then triple or quadrupling the cost of things that comes back to us, then we have to pay for it. So that's a whole reset we got to do. And that's why I recommend we get rid of the IRS. We go to a fair market tax and something like that to reset to that. So everybody has a little bit skin in the game, so to speak. Because right now, even the poor, I mean, they go and buy a 6-pack of beer or cigarettes or whatever they're buying, you still have to pay tax. I think in California, the use tax down there is what, 8 or 9%, something like that. We have no sales tax, for example, in Montana. You can buy a $100,000 car up here and you don't pay taxes on it. So.
And in Texas, that's one of the reasons we moved to Texas from Michigan. Michigan was getting so bad. We saved so much money just by moving to Texas.
Sure.
So, so going back to the timeline, what about getting through this virus? How long is that going to take? How long is it going to be till we can kind of return to a normal?
Well, I don't know. I hate to forecast and do any modeling on that. It's a day-by-day thing, and hopefully we'll bring it down to a very low amount or no virus anymore if we can do that. We haven't been able to do that with the flu, so that virus could be hanging around a while, but the ability to treat it early and cure people. So I don't know what the timeline is. I really don't. All I know is that we have to pray for help and assistance. We have to move this forward day by day, be positive, and again, put people back to work. That's what we got to do now.
Yeah.
And again, protect America from the threats, internal and external. We have to make sure, again, I'll go back to that. We've got to have really good common sense leaders today.
Yeah.
Don't vote for somebody because he's a good politician or she's a good politician. Vote to them for what they stand for, and vote for them based on their merits, that they are a solid American and that they're going to uphold the Constitution.
Or if they're a man or a woman, or any race at all, vote for them on what they stand for and what they believe in. And that's been a big problem.
Yep, it has.
Well, Paul, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so excited. We're gonna have to make this a weekly thing. Do you think?
Well, I think if you'll allow me, and Ted will allow me, you know, if he shares you with me for an hour a week, something, that probably would work out.
I think I can manage to talk into that.
Okay.
Well, have a great day, and
thank you
so much for being here with me and for educating everybody.
Okay, my pleasure.
All right.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.